This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on 31 October 2021. This week, we're going to talk about an article that I read that piqued my interest. It was something that I think was a little misleading overall. At least call it clickbaity, but it had some interesting points, right? The title of the article was How You Can Disappear Completely from the Internet. Now, I am one in the camp that says once you've connected to the internet, there is no way you can completely disappear from it. I don't care what the GDPR allows and the right to be forgotten. I don't care if you think you've scrubbed every last bit of data off of every system you think you have ever touched. If you have placed some level of information on the internet, you are on it forever. Excuse me. Now, with that said, there are ways that you could do something different, and I think the title of the article would have been better to say, how can you become a ghost on the internet? With it being Halloween, I find that far more an appropriate title. So let's dig into some of the points that were in the article and see, whether or not we tend to agree. First things first. Article brings up the phone call confidentiality, and I tend to agree. If you're using a smartphone, forget about you not existing on the internet. Forget about your data not transiting the internet. Forget about you not sending out telemetry to service providers, whether or not you're using the phone or not. Now, you could set up a burner phone. That could be a thing. It would have to be as dumb as possible, and maybe that would work. But even in doing that, anything that's a cell phone is still going to connect to a cell network, which is going to have an IMEI and an IMSI attached to it, which is a unique identifier for that phone. So if it's a burner, it's going to be a one-time use, and it's going to be throw in the trash, destroy the card, buy a next one, start over. It makes it real fun and interesting in order to keep in touch with friends and colleagues. It's a one-way call, not another way call. They would not be able to call you back, that sort of thing. If that's what you want to do, you can get away with doing that, I guess. There is software out there that you can install on your smartphone that calls it a burner number. That's great for very limited use scenarios, such as selling stuff online on, say, your favorite social media marketplace or something like that, where you do need a number for people to contact you potentially, but you don't want them to have your real number, or certain vendors or things like that. Great, that's what that stuff is for, but don't consider that type of burner number a real burner, because again, telemetry from a smartphone equals bad. Hopefully this next one, being here in 2021, is something that all of us do by default. But if you don't, go ahead and pause the podcast after you hear this and turn it on. Every individual consumer computer device, not necessarily mobile device, but desktop, laptop type devices, on modern operating systems, whether they be Windows, Linux, Mac OS, have firewalls built in. Turn them on. It's a very simple thing, usually a checkmark box of some sort in your settings. This will help keep your computer more obfuscated from the internet. Does it hide you completely? No. Anyone that suggests that it does is wrong. You should also use, if you know how, and if you don't, talk to one of your resident IT friends on setting up network address translation on your home routers. Most of you should be doing this automatically already, so it's not something you need to worry about, but essentially, you'll have private address spacing inside your home that connects to your public address, which is what's given by your internet provider. This is great in one aspect because it kind of obfuscates how many devices are behind that router to a degree, not 100%. There's plenty of ways to figure all that stuff out. And it provides only one IP address in and out for all the services that you use. Now, your ISP will know every single service that you use. You may need to use a VPN or something else to help obfuscate that a little further, and depending on the type of VPN you use, they'll be able to see into the packets or not. Not all VPNs are made the same. And if you're one of those that is saying already, Professor, I don't believe you, I turn my firewall on, I use private internet browsing, I do all this fun stuff, and I'm good. Good. Go to mybrowserinfo.com or browserleaks.com. They are not affiliated with this podcast or advertising in any way. I just find them to be useful. You can see for yourself all the type of data that leaks out from your browser and what it is telling someone else about you. Whether that someone else is nefarious, or using that data because you're a consumer of their content, it's indifferent. Your data is out there, and they can start to build a profile of you, the individual. On the note of browsers, since they are so tightly integrated with our operating systems, at least on the majority, let's talk about that real quick. If you use Windows 10, 11, possibly Windows 8 and 7 to a lesser degree, which have their own security nightmares involved, so please continue to move forward. Let's sit with Windows 10, Windows 11, Mac OS, the most recent versions, and Linux, right? Essentially, if you're using either Windows or Mac, there is a level of telemetry that definitely, and I do mean definitely, goes back to each of those companies. They are collecting information on you. Now, how they collect it, what they do with it, whether or not there's a level of encryption or privacy, so only that company can see it, that's a debatable thing, and each of them have their own marketing pushes on what they're doing and why they do it and all that sort of fun stuff. Great, okay, thank you, yay privacy. However, they are still collecting a level of data to form a profile of you. The only way to help ghost yourself from the internet at an operating system level, not the only way to ghost, but just with your operating system, would be to suffer through using Linux. Now, the hardcore IT community will say there is no suffering. Linux is easy and great. Yes, I agree. It's a wonderful operating system. I have many different versions that I use both on hardware and in VMs. However, I would not make my father use Linux without me at his side. And since we don't live in the same state anymore, it's probably not going to happen. With that said, if you wanted to go down the Linux trail, there are many distributions that are focused on privacy, and this is something that I would consider if it is of interest to you. Back to our internet browsers. So I mentioned if you're using the privacy tab or the privacy setting or the start new tab in private browser mode or incognito mode or whatever mode you want to call it or whatever mode is branded as, those are, to a degree, better. I use that term lightly. How are they better? Well, all the pictures and data and cookies and widgets and whatnots that websites put on your system to track you go into essentially a walled off, bifurcated enclave of information for a short period of time while the browser is active. And when you quit out of the browser, not when you close the window, because especially on macOS, when you close a window, you have not quit out of the program. It is still running. When you exit out of the program, all of that information is deleted from the computer. At least it's supposed to be. When that happens, all of that, those cookies, that data, that whatnot, and widgets, they're all gone. If everything worked right, which means so is the tracking that all of those cookies and widgets have tried to do. That's a good thing. That will help make your risk profile a little bit lower, and you'll be a little bit more of a ghost to these companies. Certain browsers have more of a focus on this than others. One that I would highly recommend if you really want to dig down the rabbit hole is Tor. Tor is set up to essentially act like a VPN from within the browser itself and connects to a separate network that transits the internet. Now, there's debate over whether or not the Tor network is or is not secure, but it does obfuscate you further overall. That's a good thing. Performance may suffer depending on what the route is that your information goes through, etc., etc. It's free. You can get it from the Tor project. Go ahead and give it a try. Recommendation, when you install it, do not, and I repeat, do not resize the window Leave the window the size it is. By resizing the window, you're giving yet again another piece of information that can be tracked about you and your system. Another browser out there that has a focus on security, at least to a degree, is one that's based on Chromium, which is our favorite Chrome browser. And it's called Brave. Now, Brave has a focus on privacy. However, Brave has its own ad system that's built into the browser. So take that for what it's worth. If you're using any social media, your tweets, your Facebooks, your, what are they calling themselves now? Not Facebook anymore, Metas, right? Your Instagrams, your chat snaps, whatever. You've already given up way more information than you probably realize. So, remove those from your system if you really don't want any more information leaking to anybody that, let's just say some of those companies have definitely not used information in appropriate ways. They say they'll do better, they claim they're doing better, and yet we keep finding out more and more that they're really not. So, again, it's a personal choice. You do what you need to do for you. However, social media, not a way to keep yourself as low profile and as much of a ghost on the internet as possible. Email. We love our email, or at least we used to. It's been overrun by spam, at least for me. Email was not built originally with security in mind. Any security that exists in email today is bolted on. There are some secure email services that exist, and they will encrypt the message that you send, and the user may need a password to decrypt it at the end. That's wonderful. That's one way to help keep the data and the bits semi-secure along the way. Different email services are out there that you can all try. I won't make any recommendations. You'll have to go and look for yourself. There's also the PGP privacy type extensions that you can install to secure your email. I believe they used to be free. I think there's a nominal cost now involved with that. Also on the topic of email, with all that spam that you get, if you open that and you see pictures and whatnots load, congratulations, you've had some cross-site scripting action happen, and those pictures and websites, or at least those images at a minimum, are downloading to your computer from another website that is now tracking the fact that it downloaded to that computer. Once again, more risk profile high. What you would want to do, and I think Outlook at least used to do this by default if you're using that as your program, doesn't load the images unless you expressly tell it to, or you expressly make it a safe place to load from. That's a good way to keep the risk profile lower and keep you more as a ghost. If you're using Gmail, and you weren't aware of this, I'm sorry to report to you, they are scanning your email for every last bit of information, they being Google, that they can extract out of it. How do you think you get those wonderful ads at the very top that somehow relate to what your interests are, almost down to like the last few things you searched? It's all coming out of your browser, especially if you're using Chrome and Gmail. If you want to stay more of a ghost on the internet, don't use Gmail. Just don't. It's not a healthy thing in that respect, at least if you don't want Google to have your information. That's all for this week. I'm your professor of cyber risk, and we'll talk again soon. If you like this podcast, share it with your colleagues and friends. Your support is how we are able to continue to make this content. Thank you.